They left the baby alone for 2 minutes, then found a bobcat in the bathtub. The baby's cries had just stopped echoing through the house. Somewhere down the hallway water was running, slow, steady like a clock ticking underwater. The lights in the bathroom flickered, catching on the cracked porcelain edges of the old tub. Steam curled from the tap, fogging up the mirror, masking what waited just beyond the glass. Outside, a wind dragged its fingers along the windows. Inside, silence settled too quickly. 2 minutes earlier, Mara had stepped into the kitchen barefoot, her shirt stained with applesauce and exhaustion. She hadn't meant to leave him alone. Not really. Just long enough to grab a spoon. Maybe breathe. But something had changed in that small pocket of time. When she returned, she froze. At first, she couldn't understand what she was seeing. Her body knew before her brain did. She didn't scream. She didn't move. She simply looked. In the middle of the bathtub, beneath the dripping faucet, surrounded by rubber ducks and bubbles gone cold, was a creature. Not a toy. Not a shadow. A bobcat. Its fur was soaked. Its eyes were fixed on hers. The baby sat in front of it, perfectly still, like something sacred had told him not to move. His tiny hand was reaching out, open, toward the animal's heart. The bobcat didn't growl. Didn't leap. Didn't blink. It only breathed, deeply, slowly, as if it had found something. Mara couldn't speak. Her hands trembled at her sides, unable to reach for the child. Something ancient in the air, thick and invisible, held everything in place. No one moved. No one dared. And then, the bobcat did something she would remember for the rest of her life. It lowered its head, closed its eyes, and let the baby's hand rest against its wet cheek. That was the moment Mara's heart stopped racing, and then started again. The police never came. No one called them. Because Mara didn't tell anyone. The next morning, the bathtub was empty. The bobcat was gone. But muddy paw prints curved along the hallway tiles, like fading echoes of something impossible, proof if only for her. The air in the house had changed. It was late autumn. The kind that smelled like rusted leaves and distant wood smoke. Outside, the trees leaned together, their bare fingers trembling in the wind. A thin layer of frost covered the edges of the windows, blurring the world into watercolor. That week, Mara began leaving the back door cracked open, just barely. Not wide enough to invite danger. Just wide enough to let something return, if it wanted to. And every morning she found traces. One morning, a few dead leaves scattered across the kitchen floor. Another day, tiny drops of water and a neat trail toward the hallway. Then, a single bird feather on the doormat. Still warm. It didn't make sense. But she didn't try to make sense of it. The baby Eli had started sitting near the door quietly. Not playing. Just watching. His small hands resting on the floor. Waiting. Mara noticed his breathing change when the wind shifted. Slow inhales, like he was matching something invisible outside. He smiled more, not at people but at the corners of the room when no one was there. On the fourth morning, just before sunrise, Mara stood at the sink holding a chipped mug. Through the window past the frost she saw it. The bobcat. Sitting beneath the cedar tree at the edge of the yard. So patient. Watching the house. Its breath rose in soft clouds. Its eyes were not wild, they were calm. Golden. A kind of tired wisdom behind them. She didn't move. Didn't speak. Only looked back. And somehow, that was enough. From that day forward, the bobcat came more often. Always at dawn. Always quiet. It never approached. It didn't need to. Mara began to leave scraps of meat near the steps. The next day, gone. No footprints. No sign. Just absence and memory. Eli would sit by the window now, both palms pressed to the glass. He didn't speak, but his body leaned forward, as if pulled gently by something just outside. And when the bobcat came, they would look at each other through the fogged window. Two small creatures separated by air and glass, breathing together. The mornings became rituals. The house became quieter, not empty but aware. There was something alive nearby. And it wasn't just the bobcat. It was the space between them. It was the silence that spoke. The season deepened. The frost thickened. Mara stopped questioning the ritual. Each morning she rose before the sun. She fed the baby, brewed coffee in silence, and stood near the window. Not waiting. Just ready. The bobcat was always there. Sometimes on the edge of the tree line. Sometimes closer, near the porch. It never demanded. Never begged. It only watched. Breathing. Steady. So. Eli would crawl to the rug and sit near the glass door. His hands no longer beat against it. They simply hovered like he was feeling something through the cold pain. And when the bobcat arrived he would smile, not wide, not giddy, but deep, like he remembered something too big for words. Mara began to open the door slightly when the air was warmer. Not enough to let anything in. Just enough to let the sound of breathing pass through. It became a kind of quiet language, a rhythm of presence. The bobcat would stay for exactly 9 minutes. Then it would rise, stretch its back legs one at a time and walk away without looking back. Always toward the same spot, the broken oak just past the brush, where the roots curled out of the ground like reaching fingers. One day Mara followed. Wrapped in a coat Eli held to her hip like a sack of warmth, she stepped past the tree-line. Dry leaves cracked beneath her boots. Her breath came in small clouds. The bobcat didn't run, didn't flinch. It stopped near the base of the broken oak, circled once and sat, looking up. At nothing. Mara looked too. Just old bark, stripped smooth. A knot in the trunk. Something jagged carved above it, maybe an old scar from lightning. The bobcat placed one paw against the tree. Mara felt her chest tighten. Not in fear. In recognition. As if something important had happened here. But she didn't know what. She stepped closer. The bobcat turned its eyes toward her, then to Eli. And without a sound, it disappeared into the trees. From that day on, it always visited the tree after the house. That was the subtle mystery. The unspoken pull. Why that tree? Why always that tree? Eli began crawling toward the door earlier now, sometimes before dawn. Some days he would press his tiny hand to the glass for minutes, breathing in time with something unseen. Mara noticed how calm he had become, how the quiet didn't scare him anymore, how he matched the rhythm of the wild. One morning the bobcat approached the house slowly, not stopping at the steps this time. It came to the edge of the porch, then to the doorway. Mara didn't close it. She simply knelt beside her son and watched. The bobcat sat, lowered its head, and Eli reached out, not to pet, not to grab, just to touch the space between them. And in that pause, that sacred breathless pause, Mara felt something shift. The bond wasn't growing. It had already grown. The days became colder. The first snow arrived like a secret, quiet, slow, and impossible to ignore. Eli had learned to stand now, wobbling, soft-footed, clinging to the window frame. He would wait without fussing, watching the world beyond the glass as if he already understood something no one had taught him. And the bobcat, it kept coming. Always before dawn. Always alone. Mara no longer opened the door, not because of fear but because she didn't need to. The space between them had become enough. A sacred silence. A ritual of watching. Of knowing. Every morning she would wrap Eli in a quilt, set him on her lap and sit by the door. The house was dim. The only light came from outside, blue shadows on white snow, a soft gleam through frost. The bobcat would appear at the edge of the trees. Never rushing. Just arriving. As if this place, this moment, was home. Sometimes it would sit. Sometimes it would walk the length of the porch once, then turn toward the broken oak, tail flicking once like punctuation. Mara noticed things. The way it limped slightly now. The way its ribs pressed closer to the skin. The way snow clung to its whiskers a little longer each day. It was aging. Or tired. Or hurt. She didn't know. But it never asked for anything. Never begged. Never changed. It just came. And Eli, still so young, so unaware of language, began to mirror it. When the bobcat sat, Eli sat. When it stood, Eli reached toward the glass. When it turned to leave, Eli would lower his hand and close his eyes. One day Mara followed again. It was early. Snow still falling in soft spirals. The bobcat moved slower than before but purposeful, leading her, again, to the broken oak. This time it sat beneath it longer. Not looking up. Not touching the bark. Just sitting. And breathing. Mara stood a few steps away, heart heavy with something she couldn't name. She looked at the gnarled roots, the scarred trunk, the patch of earth bare even in the snow. Something had happened here. Not something wild, something sacred. As she watched, the bobcat turned its head slightly, not toward her but toward Eli, cradled against her chest. Their eyes met. Something flickered. A kind of farewell hidden in stillness. Then the bobcat walked away. Into the woods. Not fast. Not slow. Just like it had finished something. Mara waited for it to return the next morning. And the one after that. But it didn't come. Only snow. Only silence. Only Eli at the window pressing his palm to the glass and breathing, waiting. It had been 7 days. 7 quiet mornings. 7 still windows. 7 times Eli stood with his hand against the cold glass, waiting, but no golden eyes returned his gaze. The porch steps remained undisturbed. No paw prints. No feathers. Just the snow falling like ash. Mara had stopped sleeping. She told herself it was the baby. But it wasn't. It was the ache of absence. The weight of silence that no longer felt holy, only hollow. She watched Eli carefully. He wasn't crying. He wasn't angry. But something in him had dimmed, like a candle with no one left to warm. On the 8th morning, Mara wrapped him tightly in the same old quilt and carried him outside. The cold bit at her skin, but she didn't flinch. She walked past the porch, across the yard, toward the tree line, toward the place where the bobcat had always appeared. There was no movement, only breath and snow. She kept walking, past the trees, through the thickets, following a path only her memory could see. And then she saw it, at the base of the broken oak, half covered in snow. So quiet. The bobcat, curled into itself like a question never answered. Its fur was dusted white. One paw lay stretched toward the roots of the tree. Its body looked peaceful, almost asleep, but it wasn't breathing. Mara stopped. Her breath caught in her throat. She sank slowly to her knees, shielding Eli against her chest, as if protecting him from something he had already sensed. She didn't cry. Not at first. She just watched. The broken oak stood tall above them, its scarred bark blackened by time and storms. And there, beneath it, lay the creature that had changed everything, quietly, without ever speaking a single word. Eli shifted in her arms. His hand reached out, toward the still form, and Mara let him. His fingers brushed the bobcat's fur, cold, soft, unmoving. And then, for the first time since the animal disappeared, Eli made a sound. Not a cry. Not a word. A soft exhale, as if saying goodbye. Mara pressed her forehead to his, her eyes closed tight. And that's when she noticed it, carved faintly into the bark of the tree, just above where the bobcat's paw rested. 4 initials. Faded. It. She brushed away the snow with her sleeve. It wasn't random. It wasn't damage. It was a memory. JM plus LH. A human had carved that. A long time ago. And suddenly something clicked. This wasn't just the bobcat's resting place. It was a place of return. A place of remembering. A place where something, or someone, had once been loved. And the bobcat had been coming here not to die, but to say goodbye. Spring came slowly. The snow melted in fragments, like memories softening around the edges. The wind no longer bit, it whispered. And beneath the trees, new green crept through old ground. Mara hadn't returned to the broken oak since that day. She didn't need to. The image of the bobcat curled beneath it lived inside her now, not like a wound but like something sacred. Something finished. Something that had mattered. Eli had started walking. Not all the time, just in short bursts, arms wide, feet uncertain. But every morning he would go to the window. So, he no longer waited. He remembered. One morning Mara stood at the sink as sunlight spilled through the windows. Outside, the porch glistened with dew. She turned to find Eli not at the glass, but at the door. It was open. Not wide. Just enough. Enough for a breeze. Enough for a choice. And in Eli's tiny hand was a feather. Small. Gray. Still warm. He looked up at her. Then turned. And toddled out onto the porch, barefoot, bold, toward the edge of the yard. He didn't rush. He walked the same path the bobcat had walked, step for step, pausing at the tree-line. Mara followed quietly. Not to stop him. To witness. At the place where the forest opened, Eli stopped. And sat. Not to wait. To be. His hands rested on the earth. His eyes lifted toward the branches above. His breathing slowed to match the wind. And Mara realized he wasn't looking for the bobcat. He was carrying it forward. That stillness. That presence. That silent strength. The gift had been passed. Not in words. Not in touch. But in how a life was lived after the moment had gone. She knelt beside him, her arm wrapped around his shoulders, and together they looked out at the forest, not as something wild and unknown, but as something familiar. Something returned. The trees swayed gently above them. Birds stirred in the branches. Somewhere far off, water moved over stone. And in that silence, Mara finally understood. The bobcat hadn't come to the house seeking help. It had come to offer it. To Eli. To her. To whatever had been broken and buried and forgotten beneath years of grief. It had given them the rhythm of healing. Through breath, through ritual, through the quiet bond of being seen. No language. Just presence. No explanation. Just love. Mara pressed her lips to Eli's hair, closed her eyes and listened. Not for footsteps. Not for a return. But for what the silence had become. A sanctuary. A memory. A beginning.